Uh. Good morning. Good morning.
What's up, everybody? It's the Morning Deuce. Davis Spindle. How's everybody doing? What's up? Let's get into it. July 13th. Donald Trump versus RBG is the Twitter fight you're probably waking up to. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Supreme Court Justice, a.k.a. the notorious RBG, she basically is not a very big fan of Donald Trump. She said that he was a faker, that he has no consistency about him, and he just says whatever comes into his head. He has a huge ego, and he's gotten away with not turning over his tax returns, and she doesn't know why. So she kind of just leaned into him. And Trump was not very happy about it. He tweeted out, Justice Ginsburg of the U.S. Supreme Court has embarrassed all by making very dumb political statement about me. Her mind is shot, resign, which is pretty ridiculous. He says he thinks it's highly inappropriate that a U.S. Supreme Court judge gets involved in a political campaign. And you're right, it probably is. By the same token, I know that if she had said, I think Donald Trump is amazing, he would be at the beginning of every speech being like, did you hear the Supreme Court Justice? I love her. She's amazing. She thinks I'd be great. I love her. So really, it's not so much she shouldn't be involved. It's the fact that she is against him, so he's throwing it down. And we've seen him do this before. He says it like, I hate the Washington Post. Unless they come out with a poll against me, for me, then I'll say that I like them. At least he's open with it. But, yeah, he said it was a disgrace and she should apologize to the court. But this is the notorious RBG. This is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This is a woman who fell asleep during President Obama's State of the Union. Just fell asleep on national TV, and they asked her about it, and she said, I believe the quote was, I wasn't sober during that. Which basically, like, she does not care. She is very candid, and she will just let you know what's up. Very smart woman. I will admit that. Agree with her or not, very smart woman. But that's the beef we're seeing right now. By the way, Supreme Court, Merrick Garland being nominated was one of the biggest things in the news. It was huge in politics, whether or not he'll get voted on. And Congress just decided not to vote on anything. And now it's been over 100 days. I think he's the longest Supreme Court nominee that there's ever been to not be voted on. Or at least in like 40, 50 years. It's crazy. So for those of you keeping score at home, filibusters, sit-ins in Congress, huge deal about the Supreme Court seat, yet no conclusive vote has made it to a second chamber for gun reform, and no one has made a vote on the nomination of Merrick Garland, the Supreme Court nominee. So a lot of talking in Congress, not a lot of doing anything. But they did hold 2 House committee meetings with James Comey and Loretta Lynch about emails. But even if they discovered something overwhelming in those House committee things, it wouldn't have forced the FBI or the Justice Department to revisit anything. It was really just for the sake of Congress checks and balancing the judicial system, which I totally get. I mean, that's what the point is, checks and balances. But it wasn't really unfortunate. It wasn't really going to accomplish anything. They're just hosting these hearings for their own benefit. So we have a lot of hearings about emails and a lot of hearings that won't amount to anything, and then no votes on the Supreme Court. So we still have a vacant seat there, which makes the court even, which is a little weird. We have nothing in the terms of gun control at all. In terms of just voting, that whole no-fly, no-buy thing. Because the goal is, I think, to keep guns away from terrorists and people who shouldn't have them. People who mentally should not be able to get them. And yet, we haven't done anything. But Trump versus Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I don't think she cares, which is crazy. But, I mean, that's a hell of a tweet to say that a Supreme Court justice, one of the highest respected law minds in the land, is, quote, her mind is shot, resign. Those are Donald Trump's words. That's a bold statement. It makes for great internet Twitter fodder. I read an article today that millennials now, the tech generation, is becoming to the voting age where they really care. So people are active about news-related and politics-related topics. Yet only 9% of an average presidential campaign, their average campaign ad money, only 9% goes to digital space and social media. I'm not sure if that's because so much of it is free, or because the age demographic that uses the social media doesn't vote. But I expected that number to be higher. I mean, TV ad space, they get to, the older demographic, which I know is the one that votes the most. But 9% just seems way too small for how many people you can reach with social media if you do it right. I mean, Donald Trump, however, is spending no money, and every tweet he does is responded to by a bazillion people because he knows the golden rule, which is as long as you say something crazy enough that people love it or hate it, you get eyeballs, and eyeballs means money, and that means exposure, and exposure is a key. Sad but true. So there's our little statement there. Couple other things. Happy birthday to Ken Jeong, a.k.a. The Asian guy from The Hangover, Leslie Chow. The Hangover was one of the last movies I think I saw in theaters where it was so funny that the minute it ended, I just wanted to watch the entire movie again. I mean, I would have snuck back into another theater and watched it again. Movie the first time around was pee your pants funny. Unfortunately, Ken Jeong kind of plays the same character in everything. I feel like in his back and forthness of being ultra serious and also off the rails. I mean, he seems funny. I mean, he's a funny dude. He was so funny when I first kind of got the vibe on him. But now he's just the same dude. It's getting a little hard. But 47, Ken Jeong, big ups, happy birthday. And we're in the middle of the World Series of Poker main event. If you know me, you know I love poker. Poker's probably the reason why I love statistics and examples of anecdotal evidence of how they're applied. I mean, poker, I was the perfect age for the poker boom when they started putting it on ESPN. I hit it perfectly. I loved it, paid a lot off my college expenses with it, paid off my whole study abroad with it, quit other jobs in college to play online. When I moved to California, it was the only job I had when I first moved out here. I love the game. I love everything about it. One of my friends, good friend of mine, he came in second in the main event championship, which is underway now, a couple years back for $5 million. And it was an unbelievable story. He let me go out and film him and his whole preparation. Hundreds of people went out to support him. And there's a documentary there that's my Oedipus project that someday I will finish. It is a lot of footage. It's a lot to go through, but it's going to be good when it's done. So every year when the main event starts, I think about how much I want to have $10,000 of disposable income to play because I would like nothing more. I've always wanted to be the best in the world at something. That would be a pretty cool thing to win. That's the coolest thing about the main event of poker. You can be a professional or just a regular person and still win it all. Very cool. Unfortunately, he, I believe, was knocked out today on the second day of the event, which stinks. But 6,700 people or something like that enter this tournament to try to be the best in the world at something, and a couple $1 million doesn't hurt either. So it's that time of year for the gamblers out there, the poker players. It's a great time of year. It's a great time of year. I'm always checking online to see if the people I know and the people I respect are doing well in the big main event. Part 2 tonight, I'm actually going to read something which I thought was really cool. It's from Complex Magazine, the online magazine. And I'm just going to read it because I think it's good fodder. I think it's good for thought. I think it has to do with everything we've talked about when Jonathan Harris was on here last Friday and I interviewed him. And before that, I'm just going to read it. It's called, "This article about police brutality won't change anything." This is an article about police violence from a media company that employs hundreds of millennials prompted by the murders of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling via those who swore under oath to protect and serve them. This is the attempted powerful introduction, where I paint a picture of the terrifying reality millions of American citizens must face every day. This intro paragraph invokes images of brutality past and present, detailing the shivering arm of a bloodied and dying Alton Sterling, the screams of a desperate and suffering Eric Garner, and ends with a visual of a once common practice, an innocent American being hanged in front of a cheering crowd of other Americans. This is where I make my main point. What the point is, exactly, it doesn't really matter, as the majority of the people reading this will have already agreed with the premise before clicking the link. Those who would most benefit from reading this article, the type of people who respond to videos of Americans being murdered by defending the murderers at all costs, or wondering why we should even care given that American-on-American violence happens all the time, well, they'll probably read another article on another website, most likely a site that makes the opposite points and confirms what they already believe. Police are the good guys, and it's obvious. Those Americans over there are doing something wrong. This is the part where I support my argument with facts. This includes statistics that detail the number of Americans killed by police officers, statistics on income inequality, and firsthand accounts from respected officials on the uniquely aggressive police tactic used in low-income neighborhoods. There's even historical research detailing the long-term impact of zoning laws, redistricting, mass incarceration, housing policies, federal and state lobbying, education inequality, and the continuous battle some Americans fight to keep their homes, schools, and livelihoods separate from Americans who don't look like them. These facts, organized in such a way where their correlation and parallels become obvious, should shock you and elicit action. They won't. This is the part of the article that features quotes from those who have experience with these issues. There are reactions from community leaders, police spokespeople, politicians, eyewitnesses, celebrities, and Twitter personalities whose survival is dependent on retweets. These people offer a spectrum of opinions, from encouraging to objectively vile. Some even point out possible next steps, and I even make sure to link these possible next steps in hopes that this article will assist in some small way in slowing down the purge-like visuals we're all bombarded with on a regular basis. It won't. This is the part that you've glossed over. Hey, I'm not blaming you. It's tough keeping up with so much information, so many incidents, so much violence, so many takes. This article is one of just dozens you could be reading right now on this subject. It would be unfair for me to expect you to read every word, especially considering that not a single one of these words has the power to prevent a uniformed officer from gunning down an American man, woman, or child without legal repercussions. This is the conclusion. This is where I attempt to wrap up all of these ideas into a final cohesive statement, hopefully one that has a lasting impact on the reader. It won't. Not because the wording is off or because the points aren't valid, but because, to put it frankly, these articles don't change anything. They're more a vehicle for self-expression than a vehicle for change, which is entirely more an indictment of Americans who are willingly burying their heads in the sand when it comes to police violence, than of the online media industry. But don't waste too much of your time thinking about why the richest, most powerful country in Earth's history must exist this way. Chances are that won't change anything either. So I just thought that was a really interesting thing to think about. How many articles we click on to support things we already believe in, and how those articles are maybe more just self-validation and self-expression than actually making a change. You know, how often are people calling their congressman, getting out and voting, doing something in the community to make a difference? Maybe it is protesting, though hopefully in the safest, most well-behaved way possible. But, I mean, we have a Congress that hasn't gotten gun legislation of any kind since, I think, 1994. So if that's what you support, are you just reading an article on the internet? Are you just writing something and not doing anything? Do you know who your congressman is? Do you know how they feel about issues like that? Are you monitoring them? Are you choosing to vote with them or against them? Are you voicing your opinion? If you, believe that police officers should be more armed or better trained, or there should be something, to improve their abilities and their performance and their safety, are you just reading an article about how they're making more right decisions than wrong decisions? Or are you doing something to make sure that your congressman is pushing taxes in that direction? Because the reality is there's a million moving articles and stories and Facebook shares, but what are they getting done? And that goes perfectly into this segue, which is a quote from John Lewis, who is a congressman from Georgia. And what he says is, in Congress, there's way too many taillights and not enough headlights. I think that maybe can go with life too. Sometimes there's a lot more people willing to go with where the group is going and shine light on where we've been than light the path that hasn't gone yet and lead the rest of the cars. So I think that's a good way to finish today. That's it. This is the Morning Deuce. It's David Spindle. Tomorrow's Thursday. We've got a cool interview on Friday about a couple street artists, graffiti artists, and their foray into that interesting subculture of life. So stay tuned to that. Happy Morning Deuce. Kill it. It's Wednesday. Go for it. D-Spin, I'm out.